This happened to me about 10 years ago. It's something I've never forgotten, but also something I couldn't even explain up until recently. My name is Marty Frazier. I'm a 41-year-old woman, and I live in Phoenix, Arizona. I have 3 children, married to my guy since I was 21, and I work at a dentist's office as a hygienist. I have a good, yet boring life, except the night I had a run-in with those children with cold black eyes. My encounter isn't anything special compared to several other encounters I've heard here on your YouTube channel and the other ones I follow. But getting my encounter out there could help someone else get theirs out there too, or at the very least, provide another example of black-eyed children. Let me put it simply for you. They are very real. When this happened to me, my husband and 2 eldest children were away for the weekend on a trip with their school. It was just myself, my daughter Frankie, and our 2 dogs, Ruger and Ty. We live in the suburbs, on the end of a dead-end street that's very well lit. I think they targeted us because they knew we were alone and might be easier to manipulate than anyone else on our street. I have no idea where they came from or how they came to be. I have no idea why they ended up on my street at my house on that specific day. All I know is they showed up and tried extremely hard to get invited inside. Everything was fine that day, and even the evening leading up to the encounter. Then the dogs started acting weird. Both of them are lab mixes. Same litter, actually. They're both 3 years old. They are very energetic, goofy, and playful dogs. The first thing I noticed about them was that they seemed very on edge, even shaking and whiny. My daughter, who was 11 at the time, tried to explain to me that they missed the rest of our family. I shrugged it off, thinking she might just be right. Then they started hiding in my bedroom, though. They refused to come out, even when we tried to feed them leftovers from our dinner. That was a big warning sign for me. I mean, they're labs after all. They never turn down food. I thought they might be sick or something, and even considered calling our vet for advice. I decided, though, to just keep an eye on them, and Frankie and I settled in to watch a movie and popcorn. We were just getting to the part of the first Harry Potter movie where he gets sorted into Gryffindor when the bell rang. I thought it was odd. It was about 9:45. We weren't expecting any visitors. The rest of our family weren't expected back for a few days, and it was pretty late. My daughter and I exchanged a curious look, and I told her to wait on the couch while I saw who it was. I looked out the window that's on our door and realized it was just 2 children. They didn't even look as big as Frankie. I thought they must be pretty young. I was worried about them actually, thinking they needed help, so I opened the door. That's where things got weird right then and there, because I don't really remember all of what happened. I feel like I noticed their eyes right away. I mean, they were looking right at me, and they were this cold black color, but I also feel like they manipulated me to the point where I just didn't register their eyes or something. I could still see them perfectly, and I could describe everything about them. They were both boys. I'd put them between 8 and 10 years old. The taller one had dirty blonde hair, same color as mine in fact. I got the feeling he was older, but not necessarily the one in charge. He had old jeans and a blue t-shirt that looked faded and old too. His sneakers were dirty, and he had a black zip-up jacket that was open. He was a little shorter than my daughter. The other one, the one that I got the feeling might be in charge, had black hair, very black, and he had very fair skin that was a big contrast to his hair. He was about half a foot shorter than the other one, but heavier. He was wearing the same kind of old jeans, but his sneakers were black, not white. And he was wearing a red and dark blue windbreaker, so I couldn't see the color of the shirt underneath it. I asked if I could help them, and they said they needed to come inside and use the phone to call their parents because they needed a ride. If it wasn't for my daughter, I think I would have let them in right then and there, but she came up behind me and asked what was going on. She seemed to snap me out of whatever manipulation I was in, because when I turned back to look at them, I finally noticed their eyes. This wave of fear hit me like nothing I've ever experienced. I felt nauseous, actually. There was just something fundamentally wrong with these kids, and I use that term lightly because I don't think they were really kids. Just something that either looks like them or something that can make themselves look like them. But those eyes, they were just cold and soulless. I know a lot of people describe them as the eyes of sharks, and I agree. They were jet black. I told them I couldn't invite them in right then. I couldn't think of an excuse to give them as to why they couldn't come in, just that they couldn't. They looked at each other, almost amused, and tried again to get that invitation that I'm pretty sure they need now to enter a dwelling. The little one said, "Please, ma'am, we're out later than our parents want us to be, and we need to get home before we get in trouble. Our mom will be very angry with us." But there was something weird about his voice. He just seemed too proper for a kid his age, and it almost seemed like he rehearsed it. Frankie spoke up and told me not to let them in. She could tell something was wrong with them. She's always had this weird sixth sense about her. She's a pretty special girl. Usually, if her instincts say something, I follow them. When she told me not to let them in, both of the boys snapped their attention to her in unison. It almost seemed to me like they were moving as one entity. It was really creepy and unnerving. They stared at her for a few seconds. They seemed really shocked that she was refusing them entry. But then the older one spoke up. Without looking away from my daughter, he said, "But we need to come in. Just tell us it's okay to come inside." Frankie again told me not to. I wasn't planning on it, but just her reassurance comforted me. I told them that if they needed to use the phone, they could use the cell, but we couldn't let them in because we had dogs that didn't like strangers. The smaller one tried again and said it was really cold outside and they couldn't wait that long outside. He asked if they could wait inside, but I apologized and brought up the dogs again. Then the smaller one said with this kind of grin, "They won't bother. They'll just stay under the bed." Now, how in the hell could they know where the dogs were inside my house? I stared at him, now extremely agitated, and this smile spread across his face, and it just sent a wave of chills from my neck all the way to my feet. It was like he was showing off that he wasn't human, that he knew things he couldn't possibly know, and that he had power over us. Then the older one repeated to let them in, and I could actually feel myself slipping into that manipulation again. There were two people in my head right then. Myself, screaming to snap out of it, that something was wrong and that I needed to keep them out of my house. I needed to keep myself and my daughter safe. But the other voice in my head, which was like myself, but also like someone else was in control, telling me to just let them in. It was like my brain was in a power struggle with itself or something. Even though I knew these things were not kids, I still felt the need to help them. Frankie ran up and slammed the door, telling them to go away, and that they weren't welcome or invited in. Then she grabbed me by my shoulders and shook me, telling me to snap out of it. It seemed when I wasn't in their gaze that I could actually think clearly. I told her to stay away from the door and not look at them. She told me they weren't human. And you know what? I believed her. Then they rang the doorbell again and asked if they could just use the bathroom. I told them to go to hell. I swear, when I said that, I heard them snicker. They still didn't stop, though. They still tried to get invited in. They'd make really good car salesmen because they're so pushy. They know how to tug at your heartstrings, too. Maybe that's why they make themselves look like kids. "It's really cold out here, ma'am," I heard one of them say. Then he asked to be let in again. Frankie yelled some choice words that I decided not to punish her for. "We'll be in so much trouble if we don't call our mom soon. Please, just let us use your phone." I don't know which one was saying it at this point because I couldn't see them, but I told them they weren't getting in and they needed to go away. Frankie yelled to them that she was calling the cops and they better leave the porch before they got there. That actually seemed to anger them, because before that, they always seemed to ask very calmly, patiently, even politely, like they knew it was just a matter of time before I gave in and they were invited in. Whichever one was talking, I think it was the smaller one, told us they wanted to use the phone, but now he just seemed angry and aggressive. And then he said slowly and forcefully, "Just let us in." Then they started knocking again. Frankie was on the phone with the cops, telling them that we were being harassed by a couple of kids that wouldn't leave our porch. She told them that the cops were on the way, and they seemed to stop talking for a minute. It was too quiet. I was really worried at that point. I thought they were going to try something else, but when I looked out of the window, thankfully I saw them walking away. They stopped for a minute and looked around. Not at our house, just around the other houses, and then they continued to walk down the street. When the cops got there, we decided we could describe them and tell them exactly that they were kids. I mean, we left out the part about the black eyes, but we described them, and they searched the streets around for any signs of them, but they were gone. I have no idea where they went, just the general direction they went in. Once the cops gave the all clear, we explained what happened to the neighbors that had come out to see what was going on. We gave them the descriptions of the kids too, and told them not to let them in. They told me they'd keep an eye out and check in on us. Then I went back inside and called my husband to tell him too. One of our neighbors, a very nice lady named Chris, ended staying with us for the rest of the night, just because I was so shaken up. I felt better with her there. Once Frankie went to bed, I described what really happened with the black-eyed kids, and Chris seemed to believe me. She admitted to me that she believes there are things out there that prey on people, and when I asked her what she thought they were, she told me she had no idea, but they seemed to need an invitation. We talked about whether or not vampires could be real after all, but I don't think they're vampires in the Bram Stoker fashion. They never came back. We still live at that same house. Most of the neighbors know the real story behind what happened that night, and most of them seem pretty willing to accept it. I guess we kind of lucked out in that aspect. We all keep a watch out for them now. I guess that gives a new term to neighborhood watch, right? Everyone that knows our story knows not to invite them in. Still, it was a long time ago. I don't think they'll be back. I often wonder about them, though. There's so many unanswered questions I have about them. Where did they come from? Where did they go? What are they? The question that scares me the most, though, is, what did they want? And what would they have done if we let them in?